I never thought I'd be the guy posting here. But I guess life has a way of humbling you. Looking back, I should have seen the red flags. Hell, I did see them. I just ignored them because I thought I was in love. And love? Love makes you blind. Stupid. Willing to justify things you know you wouldn't put up with otherwise. I'm Alex, 28M. Grew up in Seattle, work in tech, pretty normal guy. I like my routines, my independence. I bought my first rental property at 26, something I'd busted my ass to afford. My parents raised me to be responsible. Taught me that you don't let anyone mess with your finances, that you stand on your own 2 feet. Then I met Sophia. She was beautiful. Not just in a wow, she's hot way, but in a way that made you want to stare. Dark eyes, a soft accent that made everything she said sound elegant. She had this quiet confidence, like she knew exactly who she was and what she wanted. We met at a coffee shop, one of those movie moments where we reached for the same drink order. She laughed, I laughed, and somehow, that turned into an hour-long conversation. I remember thinking, this is it, the kind of thing you hear about, but never actually believe will happen to you. Sophia was different. She came from another country, had moved to the US as a teenager, and was incredibly close to her family. That was something I admired at first. My family's important to me too, but I'd always been taught to be independent. Sophia, though, she saw family as everything. And maybe I should have realized, right then, that we viewed the world completely differently. We dated for a year and a half before I proposed. By then, I was sure. She was kind, funny, smart, everything I thought I wanted in a partner. I pictured a life with her. A house. Maybe kids someday. It all made sense in my head. Until we started talking about the future. That's when she told me something that stopped me in my tracks. In my culture, she said one night, running her fingers over my wrist, we live with our parents after marriage. It's expected. I blinked. Like, for how long? She smiled. Forever. I laughed. She didn't. Wait, I said slowly, my stomach twisting. You're serious? Of course, she said. It's how we take care of family. I just sat there, trying to process it. I'd always pictured us getting a place together, alone, not sharing a tiny apartment with her parents indefinitely. I shook my head. I don't think I can do that, Soph. Her expression changed, just for a second, like she was annoyed. Then she softened, tilted her head. Alex, this isn't up for debate. That phrase stuck with me. This isn't up for debate. We argued. A lot. She called me selfish. Said I didn't respect her culture. I told her it wasn't about culture, it was about personal space. Eventually, she came up with a compromise. Just try it, she said, her hands wrapping around mine. A few months. If you're uncomfortable, we'll move out. I should have said no. I wanted to say no, but she looked at me with those big, pleading eyes, and I thought, maybe I'm being difficult. Maybe I should compromise. So I agreed. And that was the worst decision I ever made. The apartment was tiny. 2 bedrooms, barely enough space for 4 people. Sophia and I took her old room, which was so cramped we could barely move around the bed. Her parents had the master bedroom. The living room? Completely off-limits for any kind of privacy. But the worst part? The language. Her parents almost never spoke English around me. Not in a rude way, exactly, but enough that I always felt like an outsider. Every time I walked into a room, conversations would stop. Or they'd switch to English, but in a way that felt calculated. Like they were choosing their words too carefully. At first, I brushed it off. They probably just felt more comfortable in their own language. No big deal, right? Except I started hearing the same phrase over and over. Get it done. Sophia's mom said it all the time. Always in a hushed, urgent tone. Every time she did, Sophia would tense up, nod, look stressed. When I asked what it meant, Sophia laughed. It's just a saying, she said. Like, don't procrastinate. It didn't feel like that. Then the conversations about money started. It was subtle at first. A comment here, a question there. One night, over dinner, Sophia casually asked, wouldn't it be easier if we had a joint account? You know, for wedding expenses? I hesitated. I don't know. I'd rather keep things separate until after we're married. She pouted. But it would make things so much simpler. Don't you trust me? I sighed. It's not about trust. It's just smart to wait. She dropped it. For a while. But then she brought it up again. And again. And each time, her mom was watching. Something about it felt wrong. Then I started noticing other weird things. Like how they never got mail. No bills, no junk mail, nothing. When I asked about it, her dad muttered something about paperless billing and changed the subject. Or how every time I mentioned long-term plans, buying a house, saving for the future, Sophia would get visibly anxious. And without fail, her mom would pull her aside for one of their private conversations. The last straw? I started finding my things moved. My work bag, my laptop, my bank statements. Sometimes they weren't where I left them. One morning, I caught Sophia going through my bag. She jumped when she saw me, gave me a sheepish smile. I was just looking for gum. In my work bag? With my laptop open? Something in my gut twisted. That day, I made a decision. I was going to start recording their conversations. I'm not proud of it, but at that point, I needed answers. I downloaded a voice recorder app, set my phone on silent, and left it in the living room one night. The next morning, I listened back. Most of it was normal household chatter. But then, 20 minutes in, I heard Sophia's mom whisper, "We're running out of time." My heart pounded. Sophia's voice was quieter. Nervous. "I'm trying. But he's not like the others. He actually checks his accounts." My stomach dropped. Then find a way in. Silence. Then Sophia's mom hissed, "Get it done." I stopped the recording. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone. I needed to know more. So I did something I wasn't sure I was ready for. I took the recording to someone who could understand every word. I barely remember driving to work that morning. My mind was stuck on that recording, on those words. He's not like the others. Find a way in. Get it done. I wasn't being paranoid. I wasn't imagining things. Sophia and her mom were planning something. At my desk, I sat frozen, staring at my screen, my fingers hovering uselessly over my keyboard. I was supposed to be debugging a client's software issue, but all I could think about was the conversation I'd recorded. What did she mean? The others? How many times had they done this before? I had to know. I needed someone to translate everything. Every single word. I looked around the office, my eyes landing on Mike, one of the back-end engineers I worked with. He was from the same country as Sophia's family. We weren't super close, but we grabbed beers after work a few times, talked football. I hesitated. Then I grabbed my phone and walked over to his desk. "Hey, Mike," I said, trying to sound casual. "You got a minute?" He glanced up. "Yeah, what's up?" I forced a chuckle. "So, this is gonna sound weird, but you speak their language, right?" His eyebrows furrowed. "Yeah, why?" I hesitated. This felt insane, like something out of a movie, but I had to do it. I pulled out my phone, opened the recording, and pressed play. Mike listened. At first, he looked confused. Then his face darkened. By the time the clip ended, his expression was full-blown horror. He grabbed my arm, his grip tight. "Dude, where the hell did you get this?" I swallowed hard. "My fiancée and her mom." His jaw clenched. "Alex, this isn't good." "No shit. What are they saying?" I asked. "Like, exactly." Mike took a breath, like he didn't even want to say it out loud. "They're talking about you," he said. "About how they need to hurry up and get access to your money before you figure out Sophia's not a citizen." The blood drained from my face. "What?" Mike nodded grimly. "She's been hiding it from you. And dude, it gets worse." "Worse?" I felt like I was going to be sick. Mike lowered his voice. "Her mom is pissed because you're not falling for their usual tricks. She says you actually check your accounts and that you're not as stupid as the last guy." My stomach twisted. "The last guy?" Mike nodded. "Yeah. Apparently, they've done this before. Multiple times." He hesitated. "And then her mom says, 'Don't screw this up like Detroit. We barely got out in time.'" Detroit. My chest went tight. That was the moment everything clicked. That weird, frantic argument I'd overheard between Sophia and her mom a few weeks ago. The way she panicked when I brought up joint accounts. The notebook I'd found in our closet with financial notes written in her mom's handwriting. This wasn't just a green card scam. They were targeting men, watching them, choosing them, and I was next. I gripped the edge of Mike's desk, trying to steady myself. My hands were ice cold. "You need to get out of there," Mike said urgently. "I'm serious, man. If they know you're onto them." I nodded numbly. "I know. But I had to be smart about this. If I just ran, they'd know something was up. I needed to get my stuff, my documents, everything important. I needed to get out before they realized I wasn't just another idiot they could bleed dry." I thanked Mike, but I don't even remember leaving the office. The next thing I knew, I was sitting in my car, gripping the steering wheel so hard my fingers ached. I should call Sophia, confront her. But no, that was exactly what she'd want. She'd try to talk her way out of it, cry, make me doubt myself. I needed backup. I pulled out my phone and called my dad. He answered on the second ring. "Alex." I took a shaky breath. "Dad, I need help." There was a pause. His voice sharpened. "What happened?" I swallowed. "It's Sophia. Her family. They've been lying. About everything." My voice cracked. "They've done this before. They've been watching me for months." Dead silence. Then, "Where are you?" "At work." "Stay there. I'm coming." I barely remember the drive to the diner where we agreed to meet. When I got there, my dad was already waiting, and so was my Uncle Mike. The cop. I slid into the booth, my hands still shaking. "Start from the beginning," my dad said. So I did. I told them everything. The weird behavior, the pressure about money, the recording, the other guys. By the time I finished, my dad looked ready to kill someone. My uncle just sat there, his face unreadable. Then he said, "We need to get your stuff out. Tonight." My heart pounded. "But her mom is always home." "Then we don't engage," my uncle said firmly. "We go in, get your things, and get out." I hesitated. I wasn't scared of Sophia, but her family? I wasn't so sure. Still, I nodded. "Okay." The drive to the apartment felt unreal, like I was watching my own life happen from the outside. When we pulled up, the lights were on. Someone was home. My uncle turned to me. "You ready?" "No." "Yeah." We took the stairs two at a time. My dad stayed behind me, my uncle in front. He knocked, firm and loud. The door opened. Sophia's dad. His eyes flicked between me, my dad, and my uncle. His expression tightened. "Where is Sophia?" "At work," I said flatly. "I'm here for my things." His mouth pressed into a thin line. "You should wait for her." "No," my uncle said. "We won't." I pushed past him into the apartment. My room was exactly how I'd left it, except for one thing. My backpack was open on the bed, like someone had been looking through it. I grabbed it, stuffing in whatever I could: clothes, laptop, phone charger. Behind me, my dad spoke, his voice cold. "Tell your wife and daughter to stay away from my son." Sophia's dad said nothing. I yanked open the closet, reached for the locked box where I kept my passport, birth certificate, spare credit card. It was gone. I turned, my heart hammering. "Where is it?" Sophia's dad blinked. "Where is what?" "My documents. The box that was right here." He just stared at me. A slow, cold realization crept in. They were trying to trap me. If they controlled my documents, they controlled me. My uncle stepped forward. "Listen, I don't think you understand the situation. If you're hiding that box, you're in a lot more trouble than you think." For the first time, I saw something flicker across his face. Not fear. Resignation. "You should leave," he said quietly. I clenched my fists. "Give me my stuff. Now." He disappeared into the bedroom. A minute later, he came back with the box. The lock was broken. I yanked it open. Everything was there, except my extra credit card. I looked up. "Where is my card?" Nothing. My uncle grabbed his phone. "We're canceling it." As I walked out, my phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. "Where are you? My dad says you're taking your things. Please talk to me." I stared at it. Then I turned off my phone. I didn't go home that night. Hell, I didn't even go to my parents' house. Instead, I checked into a cheap motel across town. One of those places where the front desk guy barely looks at you, and the room smells like stale cigarettes and industrial strength cleaner. It wasn't comfortable, but comfort wasn't the point. I needed somewhere they wouldn't find me. I threw my bag onto the bed and just stood there, staring at the wall, trying to process everything. Sophia had never loved me. Not the way I thought. Not the way I loved her. She hadn't fallen for me. She had picked me, like a mark, like an opportunity. She had been watching me, planning this, long before I ever knew her name. My stomach twisted. I needed a drink, or sleep, or maybe just a way to shut my brain off for 5 goddamn minutes. Instead, I sat on the bed and did something really, really stupid. I turned my phone back on. The messages flooded in instantly. Missed calls, texts, voicemails. Not just from Sophia, from her mom, her sister, even her dad. The most recent one stopped me cold. Unknown number. We need to talk. Come home. I stared at it, my pulse pounding. I knew who it was from. Her dad. My fingers hovered over the screen. For a second, just a second, I actually considered answering, just to see what he had to say. But then my brain caught up. No, I wasn't stupid. I wasn't falling for it. I blocked the number. Blocked Sophia. Blocked her entire goddamn family. Then I powered my phone down again and threw it onto the nightstand like it was tainted. I didn't sleep much. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sophia's face. Not the version I fell for. Not the girl who used to laugh at my bad jokes or steal bites of my food when she thought I wasn't looking. I saw the real version. The one from the recording. The one who whispered about the others and panicked because I wasn't as easy as the last guy. I saw her mom's sharp voice hissing, "Get it done." And I saw the word Detroit flashing in my mind like a neon sign. At some point, I must have dozed off, because the next thing I knew, sunlight was streaming through the motel window. I grabbed my phone, hesitated, then turned it back on again. One new message. From my mom. "Mom, call me when you wake up. It's important." My stomach dropped. I called immediately. She picked up on the first ring. "Alex," she said, her voice tight. "She came here." I sat up so fast I got dizzy. "What?" "Sophia," she said. "She showed up at the house last night." I swung my legs over the bed, heart hammering. "What did she say?" "She wanted to talk to you," Mom said. Said it was all a misunderstanding. That she deserved a chance to explain. I laughed, short and bitter. "And what did Dad say?" "He told her to get off our porch before he called the cops." I felt a surge of relief. My dad wasn't one to play games. "Did she leave?" I asked. Mom hesitated. "Not right away. She argued for a bit. Said you were making a huge mistake. Then she just stood there for a while, like she was thinking about something. That sent a shiver down my spine." Mom exhaled shakily. "Alex, she wasn't right. I don't know how to explain it, but she looked off. Not angry. Not even sad. Just cold." I clenched my jaw. That was the real Sophia. The one she'd been hiding. Mom continued. "Finally, she said something weird. She looked at me and your dad and said, 'He doesn't understand what he's throwing away.' Then she walked off." I exhaled slowly, running a hand down my face. "She's not going to let this go," Mom said softly. I knew she was right. Sophia had invested too much time in this. And people like her? People who use others like chess pieces? They don't just give up when the game doesn't go their way. They find another way to win. And that terrified me. "Stay with us," Mom said suddenly. "Please, Alex. Just for a few nights. I don't like the idea of you being alone." I wanted to argue, to tell her I had it handled. But the truth? I didn't feel safe. So I swallowed my pride and said, "Okay." I packed up my stuff, checked out of the motel, and drove straight to my parents' house. The moment I walked in, my dad clapped a hand on my shoulder. "You all right?" I nodded, even though I wasn't. Mom hugged me tight, like she thought I might disappear if she let go. We sat at the kitchen table. Dad poured me coffee. And then, after a long silence, he said, "What's the plan?" I exhaled. "I don't know." Mom frowned. "You should call your lawyer. See what your options are." That was a good idea. A damn good idea. "Yeah," I said. "I'll do that today." Dad sipped his coffee. "And you should also file a police report." I hesitated. For what, though? They haven't done anything illegal yet. Dad's expression hardened. Yet. My uncle called later that afternoon. You sitting down? He asked. I gripped my phone tighter. Yeah. There's a case in Detroit from 4 years ago, he said. Guy got engaged to a woman, same background as Sophia. She moved in, started pushing for a joint account. He caught her snooping through his documents, and when he confronted her, she disappeared overnight. So did 10 grand from his account. I felt cold all over. My uncle sighed. Alex, his fiancée's name was Anna. I stopped breathing. Anna, the name I'd seen on that old photograph. Sophia had another name, another life. My uncle kept talking, but I barely heard him. Something about an open investigation, about how they'd been looking for connections between cases. I was still stuck on one thing. I hadn't dodged a bullet. I had been living with one. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her. Not the version of Sophia I thought I knew. The woman who laughed at my bad jokes and curled up against me on the couch. No, I saw the real Sophia. The one from the recording. The one who whispered about the others and panicked because I wasn't as easy as the last guy. I saw her mom's voice hissing through my phone. Get it done. And worst of all, I saw the name my uncle had given me. Anna. That was what broke me. The realization that Sophia wasn't just a liar. She was a ghost. A person who had existed under multiple names, multiple lives, all with the same purpose. She hadn't just been lying about us. She'd been lying about herself. The next morning, I sat at my parents' kitchen table, staring at my untouched coffee. My dad was pacing, my mom sitting across from me, hands wrapped around her mug like it was the only thing keeping her together. You're calling your lawyer today, my dad said firmly. First thing. I nodded. I already had my phone out. When I finally got through, my lawyer, Rebecca, listened carefully as I laid everything out. The fake name, the missing documents, the pressure about my finances, the recording. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, Alex, this isn't just fraud. This is a pattern. I gripped my phone tighter. What do you mean? There's a history here. If your uncle is right about the Detroit case, she and her family could be involved in multiple financial crimes. And if that's the case, we're not just talking about a civil matter. I swallowed hard. What do I do? Rebecca exhaled. You need to file a police report. Immediately. You already have evidence that they were trying to access your accounts. And the fact that your security box was tampered with? That's enough to get the authorities involved. I nodded, heart pounding. Alex, she added, I need you to be careful. If they realize you're taking legal action, they might try to disappear. That thought sent a chill down my spine. Because if Sophia disappeared, if she packed up and left in the middle of the night like she did in Detroit, I'd never get justice. And worse, she'd do this to someone else. I hung up and looked at my dad. We're going to the police. 2 hours later, I was sitting in a precinct with my uncle and a detective named Evans. My hands were sweating. My leg bounced restlessly. Evans listened carefully as I played the recording, his expression unreadable. When it ended, he sat back in his chair. That's damning. I exhaled shakily. So, what happens now? Evans glanced at my uncle, then back at me. We'll start by looking into her history. See if there are any official records of her using multiple identities. If this Detroit case checks out, we might be looking at an organized fraud operation. I nodded. And what do I do in the meantime? Evan's expression turned serious. Stay away from her. If she reaches out, don't engage. If she shows up at your house, call us immediately. I gritted my teeth. You think she'll try something? He hesitated. People like this, they don't like losing. If she realizes her plan fell apart, she might panic. She might try to manipulate you one last time. I left the precinct feeling both relieved and sick to my stomach. This was real now. I wasn't just a guy dealing with a bad breakup. I was dealing with a criminal. And Sophia? She wasn't done with me yet. 2 days passed. I didn't hear from her. No calls. No texts. Nothing. For a moment, I thought, maybe she was really gone. Maybe, when she realized I wasn't going to fall for her bullshit, she packed up and moved on to her next target. But then, on the third day, it happened. It was late, maybe 11 p.m. I was at my parents' house, sitting in the living room with my dad, watching some mindless TV show. My mom had already gone to bed. Then, the doorbell rang. We both froze. Dad muted the TV. We sat there for a long second, staring at each other. No one ever came to the house this late. The doorbell rang again. I knew. Before I even stood up, I knew. Dad got up first, peering through the peephole. His whole body tensed. He turned back to me, jaw clenched. It's her. I swallowed hard. My stomach twisted. I didn't want to see her. I didn't want to hear whatever bullshit excuse she had prepared. Dad exhaled sharply. Go upstairs. I shook my head. No. He narrowed his eyes. Alex. No, my voice was steadier than I felt. I want to hear what she has to say. Dad looked at me for a long moment, then pulled open the door. But he didn't move aside. He stood in the doorway, blocking her from stepping inside. And there she was. Sophia. She looked different. Her hair was pulled into a messy ponytail, her face bare, dark circles under her eyes. She wasn't wearing her usual polished, put-together outfits, just an oversized hoodie and leggings. For a second, I almost felt bad. Then I remembered the recording. She looked past my dad, her eyes locking onto mine. Alex, she whispered. Please. My dad didn't budge. You need to leave. She ignored him. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying. She wrapped her arms around herself, like she was small, vulnerable. I knew it was an act. I knew. And yet, a tiny part of me still wanted to believe her. Sophia, I said, my voice low. Why are you here? She took a shaky breath. I need to talk to you. Please. Just 5 minutes. Dad crossed his arms. No. Her jaw tensed. She turned back to me. Alex, you don't understand. It's not what you think. I wasn't using you. I swear to God. My mom. She's the one who pushed everything. She's the one who wanted the money, the account, all of it. I clenched my fists. So you're blaming her now? Sophia's face crumpled. You don't know what she's like. She made me do it. But Alex, I love you. I never lied about that. I exhaled sharply. Bullshit. She flinched. I stepped forward, my dad still close behind me. You said it yourself, I said coldly. I wasn't like the others. You were trying to figure out how to get into my accounts before I caught on. You weren't trapped, Sophia. You were part of it. Her lower lip trembled. I was scared. I almost laughed. She saw I wasn't buying it. Her expression shifted. The tears disappeared. The sadness melted away. And for the first time, I saw her completely. Not the woman I loved. Not the person I thought I was going to marry. I saw the con artist. The woman who had done this before. The woman who was only standing here now because she was losing. She swallowed, her expression hardening. You think you're so smart, she murmured. You think you've figured everything out? I said nothing. Her eyes flicked toward my dad. Then, softer, calculated, she said, You don't have proof? I just smiled. Her face faltered. What? I tilted my head. That's why you're here, isn't it? I said. Because you're worried. Because you don't know how much I have. Her nostrils flared. I took another step forward. I have everything, Sophia. The recording. The financial notes. Your fake name. And guess what? The cops know, too. For the first time, she actually looked scared. Her fingers twitched at her sides. Her jaw clenched. Then, just like that, she took a deep breath, exhaled slowly, and when she looked at me again, she was calm, cold. She nodded, like she'd finally accepted something. Okay, she whispered. I get it. I frowned. She took a step back. You won't hear from me again. She turned, walked down the porch. Then, just before she got to her car, she stopped, glanced back over her shoulder, and said, so softly I almost missed it. You should have just let me in, Alex. A shiver crawled down my spine. I didn't say anything, just watched as she got into her car and drove away. She was gone. For good this time. I didn't realize I was shaking until my dad put a hand on my shoulder. You okay? He asked. I exhaled, nodded, but something about her final words, the way she said them, stuck with me, like a warning. like a threat. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I got another call from my uncle. "She's gone," he said. "Her whole family. They cleared out overnight. Disconnected their phones. Wiped their social media. It's like they were never here." I closed my eyes. "You think they'll get caught?" A long pause. Then, "Maybe." I swallowed hard, because I knew what that meant. They would try again. Somewhere new. With someone else. And that thought haunted me more than anything.